Alright, so developing with Vagrant. We're going to talk about Vagrant today, and I'm going to show you a brief intro of what it is if you're not familiar with it and why it's useful to you as a developer or as a system administrator or a DevOps guy. We'll go through the installation of it and the configuration and talk about a couple of different configurations that you can use for getting it set to just the way that you want it. And my favorite part of it is starting over. So the coolest thing about Vagrant is your ability to blow it out and start all over from scratch, and I'll show you how that works. And then you'll leave here with a little bit of homework to get ready for the next meeting that we do on building a Puppet environment. So Vagrant is basically it's a little tool that works with VirtualBox, and it works with some other providers as well, but VirtualBox is the one that we use it with. And it gives you a way to create virtual machines easily and consistently. So you can use it to create a virtual machine and then share that Vagrant image with all your coworkers, and you know that all of you guys are working with the exact same configuration and the exact same machine. It also gives you the ability to run that machine locally on your laptop, so you can do things that you wouldn't want to do on a production environment or on a shared server. And then whenever you do something that you really regret, it's really easy to just blow the whole thing out and start over from scratch. And if you're not doing that, then you're not trying hard enough. And the last thing that it does for you is it gives you the ability to do provisioning. So you can customize it to meet your specific needs and then have that be reproducible by you and other people. So obviously it requires Vagrant to be installed. Hope I didn't lose anybody on that one. You have to install Vagrant to use Vagrant. Delayed reaction. And it requires VirtualBox. It was like a joke grenade where you pull the pin and you throw it out and it takes a few seconds to go off. So it does require VirtualBox. Vagrant just starts and stops VirtualBox images, so you have to have that installed as well. And if you're using Windows, you do have to have the Visual C++ 2010 SP1 redistributable in order for that to work. Unless if you already have Visual C++ 2010 installed, then you can skip that requirement. I guess that applies for people who write code in Visual C++, not me. So the configuration in its simplest form is you just type vagrant init and then the name of your box. And so let's take a look real quick at some boxes here. So if you go to the Vagrant website, vagrantup.com, there's a link here for boxes. And a box is just a pre-configured image. So you can search for one that already has a majority of the work that you want done. So you can type Elasticsearch, and you'll come up with some different boxes that have Elasticsearch installed on them. And you can do the same for any other package that you want, whether it's well, just any package, but then you can also specify it by provider, because we're using Vagrant with VirtualBox, but you can see you can also use it with VMware, AWS, DigitalOcean, Docker, and some others as well. So once you have initialized that with the name of the box, you can type Vagrant up. So let's do that. We can just type Vagrant init RTAC Debbie and Jesse. And RTAC is the name of the person or company who created this image, and then Debbie and Jesse is the name that they gave to that specific box. So you can see the Vagrant file was created, and then we type Vagrant up, and it's going to start bringing that online.
Okay, we ask.
Yeah?
Or we wait until the end?
No, bring them on.
Okay, when you said attack, RTAC is the name of the company that created it. So that is because we are using one that already exists, right?
Right.
But if I want to create one,
if you create one from scratch on your own, then you can name it with your name.
Okay.
But you'll see that you'll see here before we're done that there's rarely a need to do that.
So it's always the name of the company and the rest is the name of the package.
Right. All right, so that's already up, so I can just type vagrant SSH, and then that's going to SSH me into this box. And so if you type cat etc issue, you can see that it's a Debian Linux 8 box. So now I'm no longer on my local laptop, I'm inside of a Debian image running on my workstation. So the Vagrant file, when we ran that init command, it created the Vagrant file, and then it just configures, it uses Ruby to configure the box itself. This would be a simple example that just brings up a vanilla image like we just did. And then if you want to look at the full file here, the one that's created from the init command is actually pretty detailed, and there's lots of documentation in here, so you can actually just read through the file and understand a lot of the features that Vagrant has available. Let's go through them one at a time, though, and talk about some of the different pieces that apply to us. So provisioning is the way for us to customize the image. So we used a basic Debian image whenever we brought it up, and now we can use provisioning to customize that to our needs. So this is a shell provision script here. You can see it starts with the shell command here and ends with the shell tag there. And then in between the two are just the actual bash commands that I would execute if I were to log in and do this manually. Whenever you bring a Vagrant image up, it will execute all of these commands. Vagrant supports provisioning through Bash, PowerShell, Chef, Puppet, Ansible, CF Engine, and I think maybe a few others as well.
I got another question.
Yeah.
Maybe you said it again, but when you have to download the image, right?
Mm-hmm.
So where do you have to put that image for us to just initialize the background and it will find it?
When you use the Vagrant init command, it goes out to the Vagrant website and pulls it down from there.
We don't have to download it manually?
Right.
Cool, man.
Yeah. We can also have shared folders. By default, most images will share the folder containing the Vagrant file as a /vagrant folder. So if we look here and do look at the Vagrant folder, you can see I launched this from my temp folder, and so there's everything that's the contents of my temp folder on my local workstation, including the Vagrant file I created itself. You can sync other folders. You can sync the code folder, the Puppet code, or in this example, .whack code, I'm syncing the code folder from one level up to a folder called Puppet code, and the same thing, a Puppet server folder, one level up to a Puppet server folder on the image. So why would I want to do that? If you look in the screenshot here, it's because whenever we've got our Vagrant folder here with a Vagrant file, the Vagrant file we brought up in it, and then up above that we have the two folders, the code folder and the Puppet server folder, and then I open this with my local text editor on my MacBook, and now I can edit the contents of the code in those folders, and because they're synced folders, they'll be available inside my Vagrant server immediately. So then it gives me the ability to edit the code on my local workstation and have it automatically update to a remote server. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Cool. You can have multi-machine environments. So if we look at this configuration, we have our do loop, and then inside of that we have multiple machines configured. There's a Puppet server that's running on CentOS 7, and then we have 3 agents, Agent 1, Agent 2, and Agent 3. The first one's running on CentOS, the second one's running Debian, and the third agent's running Windows 2012. So whenever you bring this up using the Vagrant up command, it's going to launch all of these, all 4 of those machines with a single command. You can use that a little bit further to include provisioning so that whenever you launch this one, it configures itself as a Puppet master, and then these will install the Puppet agent and automatically register to that Puppet master. So then you've got a full-blown Puppet environment with a single command. So when everything goes wrong, you either do something you regret or you're done with writing all of your code. You need to test to make sure that you haven't done something manually that's not covered by your code or provisioning scripts. You can type the command vagrant destroy, and vagrant destroy blows out all of the vagrant images, completely removes them, so that when the next time you type vagrant up, it restarts everything from scratch. It starts with new vagrant images, it runs the provisioning scripts over, and then anything else that you've automated in that task as well.
As you know, here in the Philippines, our internet connection is very fast. So,
Right?
So, like for our case, what's your recommendation on how we gonna like probably down create like a library of images locally and then just use it? What do you have like any?
Yeah, so there's only a couple of images you'll probably use. You won't use a whole bunch of different ones. So you have like a Debian image and a Windows image, and that's probably going to be about it. So the first time you type Vagrant up for a specific image, it'll download it from the Vagrant website to your workstation, and then you can create as many copies of that image as you want, and it won't download it anymore. So like in the example here, I'm using the box cutter CentOS 72 image for 2 different machines. When this one launches, it'll download that from the Vagrant Up website. But then whenever this one launches, it's already been downloaded once here, so it will just use that local copy. And so we can have multiple machines based off of that image.
So when you execute Vagrant destroy, it doesn't delete the downloaded images.
Right, it only deletes the Vagrant machine that you created from that image, from that box. All right, so your homework. On Wednesday, we're going to do another class on building a Puppet environment. So your homework between now and then is to get Vagrant installed, any dependencies you need, and launch a Vagrant image on your own local workstation. So create and launch your own image. And then on Wednesday, we'll pick up from there and we'll start building our own Puppet environment. Questions?
About the sync folders,
Yeah.
I already tried syncing, but it's not working. I tried to edit it on my web, it doesn't sync on Vagrant server.
Right.
So, is it a known problem or just like configurations that I've set?
Yeah, it could be configuration. Did you get any errors whenever you launched when you brought your Vagrant image up?
No.
No. Are you able to see the Vagrant file from within your
Yes.
Vagrant image? So everything's working on startup. It's just the sync after that fact isn't working.
It's not working.
I don't know. I can take a look at it with you after this.
My question is, we tried Vagrant before, and then I think we got stuck about we set up the Vagrant and everything. We'd like to save that and share that with the others.
Mm-hmm.
How do you
You just
upload it to Vagrant or?
So you really, the way you want to do it is you want to do all of those setup scripts. So you bring up the Vagrant image and then you have to do a bunch of configuration. You want to do all of that configuration inside the Vagrant file, and then you can just share that Vagrant file with someone, and then they can launch it like that.
Do you mean the entire image or just the script?
Just the Vagrant file itself. I can show you. If we go out to our Git repo, there's a Vagrant folder in there, and inside of there is a Vagrant file. So if you check out the Puppet repo for Trax, and then go into this Vagrant folder and type Vagrant up, it's going to bring up a Puppet server and configure it as a Puppet master, and then it's going to bring up a single agent, and that agent is going to automatically register with the Puppet server that you created right here. And then it also uses the linked folders to manage the config so that the Puppet master that comes up is actually running our version of the Puppet repo or Puppet code and modules from this repo. And if you look inside of the Hyra folder, under host, there's this agent1 YAML file, and that's the actual Hyra file that gets applied to that agent1 Vagrant image when it gets brought up. So on your local workstation, you can modify this file and apply all of your Puppet changes to it, and then those are picked up instantly. But the key is to have all of those provisioning steps done inside of the Vagrant file itself, so that that's all you have to share.
How does it work, I mean, for deployment? If we say we have our own project and our own laptop, it's on version Vagrant. Without the how does it work during deployment? Individual provision on your server and
So you wouldn't actually deploy your Vagrant file to production. You just use it for local development. Like in this example for Puppet, what I would do is I would create a new Puppet module. Let's say my Puppet module is to deploy Elasticsearch. So I would write a new Puppet module that does all of the deployment work for Elasticsearch, and then I would apply that Puppet config to this agent1 machine here. And so whenever I bring up agent1, it should be automatically provisioned with Elasticsearch because of the Puppet module with it. When all of that's working, I check in my Puppet code, and now I haven't actually deployed it anywhere, but in Puppet, we have a module now, a tested module that deploys Elasticsearch. And we don't have to actually have one for that. So then I can go and add that Hyra config to a production server, and that's where the deployment will happen. Puppet will manage that deployment because of the Puppet code that we wrote. Does that make sense?
No.
No? Okay. Let's do another example.
No, I mean we'll see it on Wednesday and
Yeah, let me do one more quick example to see if I can make it make sense. So let's say, let me grab a module that I know works here. So we have Kafka here, right? So we have a Kafka server. Actually, I might choose a different one because that might be hard to find. Yeah. So here we have a Node.js server. All right. And in the classes config, so we've got Node.js is the name of the server, the .yaml file, and Hyra config. In classes, I specified the Node.js class. That tells Puppet that it should install. Where'd it go? It should install this module on that server. So your development workflow for this would be to create the Node.js Puppet module, and while you're working locally, you would add the Node.js class to this agent1 machine. So then every time Puppet runs on agent1 locally on your workstation, it's going to apply that Node.js package. And you'll write the code to make that deployment work. So Puppet's actually doing the deployment, and you're writing the code to manage that deployment. So then once that deployment is working, you do a Vagrant destroy on agent1, bring it back up, and verify that it comes back up and that Puppet installs Node.js on it correctly. When that works, then you check your code back in. So now we have a working Node.js package, and then we can use that package to go to any of our production servers. And any of our production servers that need to have Node.js installed on them, we just add the line Node.js to the classes array, and that's going to do the deployment. Make a little more sense? Cool.
So, I think Vagrant isn't really for production use, it's more of a development tool.
Right. Vagrant is for development, right? Vagrant is for developing the code locally and working out the deployment process that you'll use to push that code to production.
What's the difference using the GitHub?
So GitHub is where we store the actual code that we write. And then Vagrant, the Vagrant image is where we actually test out that code.
But we're also pushing the Vagrant image to our production.
No, not pushing the Vagrant image itself.
I mean, our working code, we're also pushing that to production.
You'll push your working code, and it depends on your deployment. It depends on how your deployment process works. Like for this example, we're using Puppet to push the code to the production servers. So Puppet's been configured for each package to know where to grab it from and how to apply it and how to install the software. So that's what makes this work. You push your code to the repo, and then you use Puppet to say this server should have this code, and Puppet manages that deployment process. If part of your deployment process is to push the code manually or through some other fashion from the GitHub repo to the production servers, then it may have to do a little different process. Puppet may not be involved at that point.
So we have a production server, right? So we also have a Vagrant box that we could use for development. So how do we it's working on the my question would be, how do we gonna ensure that our Vagrant box is has the same provision on the production server, so that when we do development, it's working on our Vagrant box, but when we deploy to prod, it was not working. So how we gonna check if they're in sync?
Through if your code's in Git, you'll use Git to do that, because you'll check out the code locally from Git, and then your deployment process will check out that same code from Git. So you just make sure that everyone's on the same branch
How
in
about
Git.
the provisions if it's needed Apache on that server, this version, but my version on my Vagrant box is different. How we gonna for us to know that, making sure that I'm not sure if probably my question is not that.
Yeah, no, it's completely making sense. That's what Puppet does for you. If you define your server correctly in Puppet, you can control those there. So whenever you define a class of Node.js in Puppet, the Node.js module in Puppet knows all the prerequisites and any version requirements, so that whenever it does that installation, it manages those for you. Yeah.
Actually, that was going to be my question. How do I know which one is the best for me to use?
So that's a good question. Jose asked, which is the best Vagrant image to use? How do you know which one is the best image to use? Look at the number of downloads and the number and the last release of it. But then also look back and see who the provider of it is as well, because whenever you download somebody's VirtualBox or somebody's Vagrant image, you're getting everything that they've put in that image. Like that includes keystroke loggers, viruses, ransomware, malware, spyware. So check your sources and make sure you're getting them from reputable places. Almost every modern software vendor provides Vagrant images. Elasticsearch, Node.js, MongoDB, Puppet has their own, Debian provides their own. So you can get them from like the official place that you're looking pretty easily.